So good afternoon. Wow, that's loud. I'm quite loud. Or, as we say in my native homeland, kia ora. I want to do a little, I guess a little lesson before we start. We've just had lunch, everyone's full. I want to make sure energy doesn't dissipate in the seat. So could everyone just stand up for a second? If you've got a laptop, put it to the side. This is an important lesson as well. Okay, stand. I see two people sitting down with the laptops. That's good, yeah. Nearly there. I'm watching you. Okay, everyone's standing up, good. Now put your arms out. I know that some people would be, okay, and now twirl them around a bit. That's what I can do because I'm on the stage. That was purely for my enjoyment. You can sit down now. Cool, I make you look stupid and you clap, awesome. So my name's Josh Kalderimis. I'm here to talk about Beyond Saas, building for the enterprise. But before we get started, I thought maybe a little bit about me. You can learn a little bit about me. Well, I'm from this tiny little island called New Zealand. Okay? We're known for our sheep. I think there's more sheep than people. And we're known for our hobbits. They're our second largest export. And for our business time. I come from the city called Wellington, capital of New Zealand, middle of New Zealand, but bottom of the North Island, and beautiful at night. Absolutely fantastic city. It is the inventor of the flat white. I am calling Wellington the inventor of the flat white. Also known for our flying skills. It's also one of the windiest cities on the world, or consistently windy. This is not an abnormal landing. I have been on one of these. I now live in this fantastic city called Berlin in Germany, known for a lot of its history, a lot of its, if there are any GitHubbers here, they've probably got a season pass to Berghain, and also for the wall. But I actually wanted to bring up an important point. How many people here are American? Yep, okay, good. So I love you guys and all, but you gave us David Hasselhoff. You gave him a platform. So you can't see it very well here, but David Hasselhoff became incredibly famous in Germany for singing on top of the wall as it was coming down. In fact, it sat at the #1 position for 8 weeks in Germany and 4 weeks in Switzerland. But it was ranked by AOL Radio as the 98th worst song in the world. And he quotes, "It testifies to the power of music. Horrible, horrible music, to unite and uplift us all." And look, he's still going today. So thank you, America, for playing a big troll on us. So back to the talk, my name's Josh Kalderimis. I work for this company called Travis.ai. I'm one of the co-founders there. And I want to talk about SaaS and enterprise and how you can become an enterprise product from your SaaS product. So essentially what I'm really talking about is what we learnt by building Travis.ai Enterprise. Enterprise, you say? Travis.ai Enterprise? Yes, it's like Travis for the enterprise. It's kind of like this, but for the enterprise. Okay? So a little bit of background. I think the best way to kind of understand how we've built an enterprise product is also by understanding some of the pains and things that we've gone through, a lot of our learnings. So as I said, I'm one of the co-founders here. We've now become a team of 23 fantastic people, where half our team are remote, half are based in Germany, and the other half are women. Well, not the other half are women, half are men, and we're a very remote diverse team. We run a continuous integration service, so if you haven't heard of us, we essentially test your code, and even better, we test your code when you push to GitHub. We've got about, as I last checked, about 200,000 users on our open source platform. We've got about 300,000 tested repositories. And of that, we're doing about 250,000 jobs per day across .org and .com. And all of this came from this guy here with his fantastic moustache. You might even recognize him from a lot of the stickers that we've got. Sven Fuchs was the original guy that kind of came up with the idea of Travis CI. He wrote a blog post in 2011, right at the start of the year, and I emailed him the next day and I said, how can I help? And he gave me commit access straight away. What we wanted to do is just help open source. It was an open source project to help open source. And primarily at that time, we were Ruby developers. What we wanted to do is we wanted to allow developers to test against multiple versions of Ruby with ease. Because if you were to do this yourself back then, you would spin up a Jenkins, you would create a very horrible, convoluted config file, and then you would have to do this for each project. You'd be doing it yourself. There was no isolated environments. What we wanted to do is make it as simple as 1, 2, 3 for testing your software. But what we really wanted is to help people build better applications. By testing those libraries and having people use those libraries that are tested, you can be at least a bit more certain that your code is of better quality because that code that you're using is better quality. So it was 2 people, and 2 people was not really going to achieve what we needed to achieve. In fact, by that time, we were already 2 people with a lot of open source help. And we quickly grew to a 4-person co-founder team. We even had a team uniform. It even went all the way to the top. It even had a summer edition. We decided to do things a little bit differently as well. We wanted to do a crowd-funded company. And so what we did is we created a website called love.travisci.org where people could donate, companies and individuals, and they could donate to us wanting to achieve some goals. Quite similar to a Kickstarter, but we rolled our own. Hooked it into Stripe, and over about a 6-month period, we raised about $140,000. So this got us going. It allowed us to contract a little bit on the side, pay what we needed to pay at the bare minimum, but work on the product, work on Travis so we could provide a better product and, service to our users and customers. We had all these great customers donate, and what we kind of figured out from this is a lot of these people were emailing us asking to test their private code on Travis. So travisci.org was our MVP, while crowdfunding was our confirmation that we're onto the right track. So as I said .com and .org. In fact, if you've used Travis at the moment, we have got 2 different domains. Everything open source sits on travisci.org, and everything private sits on travisci.com. And this is a really important thing that I'll come back to. So we have 2 different production environments. It's not 2 different domain names leading to the same application. It's 2 different deployments. In fact, it's even 2 different staging deployments, 2 different production deployments. Everything started as one Rails app. But for us to scale and to meet that demand of running all of those jobs per day, we do about 17,000 HTTP requests per minute. And it quickly grew into a semi-SOA-based application. It moved off as well to being Ruby and a bit of Go. So we use Go as our worker. Ruby is very prolific in our product and platform code. But of course, for us to focus on building a good application, we embraced Saas as well. We're big supporters of Saas, and we love PaaS as well. So we decided we're going to use Heroku. We used Heroku for all of our deployments, and on top of that, we used a lot of providers for things like database, Redis, Memcache, AMQP, and file storage. We didn't want to recreate the wheel. Why do that when we can just buy it? So here is essentially our architecture. This was created by 2 of our juniors that joined earlier this year, I believe it was, and with this idea of creating a trainee project. I love seeing all these phones out, taking essentially a picture of a very complicated architecture diagram. There's a lot going on here. There are 2 databases, logs and production, our main database. We've got Redis being used heavily. We've got separate apps for lots of different smaller tasks, like Travis Listener listens to the events from GitHub, stores them onto Redis, which is then processed by Gatekeeper, which then updates the database. We have a scheduler that will then pop these jobs onto Rabbit, which the workers will pick up. Logs are sent to Travis Logs, which processes them, sends them to Pusher and to a database. Then we've also got Travis Hub with the updates. And then task sends notifications at the end, along with Travis Live with using Pusher and subscribed channels. There's a lot going on. And we did this because we're trying to scale it organically. You don't go out and create an app saying, oh, I'm going to create a service and instantly I'm going to create 20 different apps. This happened over time and naturally. So of those apps, this is all of them in an addition of an admin one at the bottom. All of these, bar 2 apps, are open source. So I'm just going to remove the Travis part, remove some of the noise. Now, one thing that you might not have noticed in that architecture diagram was that these 4 apps, API, Gatekeeper, Hub, Admin, will just kind of put into a special category that's for helping our support staff. They share a library, I'm going to use the polite term library and not bundle of mud, called Travis Core. It was our way of sharing business logic and models between our apps. Again, it's a natural project, natural progress. But on top of that, as I said, we run travisci.com. That also has Travis Pro Core. Now, when I said it was separate deployments, we actually also have additional code. When we were developing .com, we weren't prepared to do everything out in the open. We wanted to try and figure out to get things right, and then figure out how we can merge everything back and have a more open code base. This also meant that we had some pro apps. So again, this is actually a lot less than what it used to be, but this is what we've got it down to at this stage. So right now, snapshot, there are 3 apps in our deployment which are pro apps. So if we think about Travis Hub, for example, it's using Travis Core. Now we think of Pro Hub, and it's using these dependencies. Now let's say we decide we're going to work on a new feature, and it requires us to update Travis Core. What we'll then have to do is do a bundle update of Travis Hub. And then what we're going to have to do is see if we need to make any changes to Travis Pro Core, and then we're going to have to bundle update Travis Pro Hub to get all of those updates. It's not great for development. So that's why we've been working hard to remove that. I told this to someone and he was like, this is way too much information, Josh. What's going on with your development? And you're right. Because what I'm trying to show is nothing is perfect in everyone's code. We make a lot of these decisions naturally in progress over time. What it shows is we now need to take all of that code and make it applicable and easy to install for enterprise. Because while we're working at providing customer value and trying to solve problems for users, other things are going to happen at the same time. Technical debt, and also a knock at the door. Our first potential enterprise customer. So it kind of brings us to, how did we build enterprise? Well, where do I start? There's a lot here. At that time, when we had our first enterprise customer approach us, we were 7 people. Yeah. We were still building our Saas product, and we were going through some fantastic growth with everything, but an opportunity was there. And the big question is this something that we should do? Now, what we did know is GitHub Enterprise was a successful product. It was a very much big part of GitHub. And we looked at them as a bit of inspiration. Because the way I like to look at it is people within enterprises, developers within enterprises, should have the opportunity to use the tools that they want to use. There were people asking us for Travis CI Enterprise because they wanted to use it. I know it sounds really stupid and simple, but essentially our advocates that liked using .org were asking to use it within another company. That's where the opportunity was. It wasn't just someone saying, oh, this might be good. It was actually a real request. Now, the problem is distinguishing distraction from opportunity. You're 7 people, and now we have to figure out how do we do the development, how do we do sales, how do we do customer demands, how do we set expectations. What you need is the entire team behind this. There needs to be buy-in from everyone. This should not be one-person project. So, and on top of that, you also need to make sure that you can pick the right price to make sure that this is I guess, a profitable endeavor, if that's the right way to say it. So what were our goals? Well, we needed to take a step back. When we're building enterprise software, there are a couple of things that are just givens. It needs to be easy to install. Your production system can be as complicated as you like. You can have 1 million scripts, but you need to package this, your enterprise product, in a way that anyone can install it. The higher the experience required, the less people that are going to take the time to try it out. It needs to be secure, not only for us, but for them. So, for example, they're holding it or running it behind their firewall, but for us, we need security for our code. We need to look at obfuscation, how to make sure that they don't then backwards engineer and then just run it without a license. Authorized use as well. So what I mean is by licensing. You need to build in licensing into your product. Are you just going to give your product away for free and have support contracts, or do you want to have a licensing model? That needs to be in your code to figure out, do I run or not? Do I not show anything? Do I allow them to configure it? And how do I tell them that their license has expired? And very importantly, it needs to be the same code base. I mean, I cannot stress that enough. It needs to be the same code base. Then there's a question about scaling. We knew how to scale Travis to 200,000 users and 125 running projects per day on .org and .com, combined 250,000, about 2,000 jobs running at once. What about enterprise? Well, I think there's an important thing here. Scaling for us was a secondary concern. We believed, and I think it's actually a fair assumption, that any enterprise installs will not be as big as our own installation straight away. It might grow to that, but at least with our first customers, we should stay away from anything that will be of equal size. Although we're handling 17,000 requests per minute on .org, just .org alone, do we need to think, or at least assume, that enterprise will be the same amount? So we took a reasonable estimation, reasonable assumption, that our first customers were going to be less than this. So we put this onto the back burner. Now, this is all during the time that Docker was coming out. In fact, at that time, it was Docker 0.8. Docker was the new hotness. People were like tattooing Docker on their chests. I'm sure it was happening. And Docker is all about single processes. So let's have a look at this again, our architecture diagram. If we were to break this into the Docker way of working, every service and every application would be its own container. Every container would have to be linked up to the services so they can talk to each other. And now you've got a lot going on with something that's quite new. Our initial trying out of the Docker way of doing things was just not working. We spent a lot of time and effort to do it the Docker way, and especially when you've got to think about process monitoring and log aggregation, it was just not mature enough. So what we decided to do is go for the mega container. It's a cheat. We were using Docker for orchestration, downloading images, starting things up, but what we're actually doing is starting sbin init. That is essentially starting an entire virtual machine. It's starting everything. You start the entire operating system. You start upstart. You can use it like you would use a normal EC2 instance. What this meant was it was easy for us to add in process monitoring and log aggregation. We used some shared volumes for saving all our database data, but it meant we could get up and running quickly. Now, on top of this, we needed to think about installation. The good thing is, it's mostly just Docker pull. That was great. A lot of people could understand that. Now, Docker was still new, so we had to have comprehensive documentation. You still had AUFS and different execution drivers coming out. And then we had to think about configuration. How do people configure this? So we had bash scripts. So what we've got, and on top of that, we then had our license YAML. So we had to build our own licensing. At this time, there was no good tooling that we could find, at least at this stage, which would help with a lot of this. Now, a lot of this development as well, so that is just the goals and requirements and what was kind of going on in the ecosystem. Now we had to actually implement the work, and this required a lot of branches, a lot of long-lived branches as we changed all of those applications, which then turned into lots of long-lived branches and lots of very long-lived branches, because the development essentially took longer than we thought. And then there's a lot of merging, and lots of merging. And merging and testing and trying and deploying and iterations on that. It essentially led to impacting a little bit of our normal code development. Because while we're working on this, there is essentially an opportunity cost. You're taking 1 or 2 developers to work on enterprise when there are other things that could be improving your customer's experience with your hosted product. There are trade-offs. Development on enterprise was more than we thought. It is a fair bit of work, especially for something as what I think Travis is quite complex, and I'm sure there are other complex apps of that nature. So we had something that worked, but what we really wanted was something more, something simpler, something that gave our users an easier installation path, easier maintenance. So then we were very lucky, someone called us. There was an introduction, and it was replicated. I was supposed to have their beautiful faces here, but you can find them at the back. And what they did is they were making a piece of software that made packaging and shipping enterprise software easy. So the idea was that it was built on top of Docker, was integrating with Docker, and it gave us a lot for a little. Gave us all of these extra features with no extra development and very little integration cost. In fact, to be honest, I then said to them, oh, I'd love to try this out. Can you help us with the configuration? The next day, Grant, one of the co-founders, said, oh, here it is, it works. And I said, oh, great, I've just sent this to 2 customers and they love it. It was that literally quick and simple for us. And what we got out of it is an easy way to install the software where you could upload a license. You got an admin panel with graphs for CPU and memory. You got to even see the next release that was there. You got to start and stop it quite easily. You got an entire settings screen. We didn't have to build any of this. And then we also got, when is your license expiring, and an audit log, which is incredibly important. People logging in and making changes, you need that logged so they can see if maybe someone else on the team made a change which broke it. And the all-important support bundle. Now this is, I guess, a thing that we learned, in that when you get a deployment out there, you know how to fix your own production environment. You know what logs to check, where to check, status monitoring, PagerDuty, pingdom, all of that. Now, if a user has a problem and that you can't get to that installation, what do you ask them for? What files do you say, can you please send me so I can check what's going on? So the support bundle is the idea of a concept of zipping all of those important needed debugging files together, sending it to you so then you can debug it. And on top of this, we also got a vendor panel, so we could see what versions we had out there. We had 3 different channels, stable for our customers, beta and unstable for development. And then we had all of our customers as well. We could see which licenses had expired, when we granted it, and the current status. So we got a lot for very little. And all of this happened in configuration. So it's a YAML configuration, and then later on it had a preview, so you can even test your GitHub authentication. You can test your SSL keys. So what did we really get out of this? This talk is definitely not about, hey, you should just use Replicator, which, I mean, you should. But what is it that we actually got out of this? Well, we got a solid installing experience. What we wanted to provide was a great install experience. We got it. It dealt with install, update, setup, everything. It was familiar to GitHub Enterprise users as well. Who here uses GitHub Enterprise? Couple of hands? So that UI, that management UI that I showed you, is pretty much CSS for CSS to what you would experience there, making it very relatable, very familiar. We got a lot of extra features. So audit log, release notes, licensing, expiration, channel management, and they also had an API for doing automatic deployments or automatic release management as well. So we could tie this into Travis, build a container, and then upload the configuration to them. And then even better, we can then upload it to one of the beta servers and do smoke tests on it. So it was enabling us to provide a better quality product. And cheesily enough, I'm a cheesy man deep down under. For me, it was an extension to our team. There were people I could talk to and ask for help and ask for features instead of just buying a product off the shelf. Now that's just a more important part of the purchasing process. I can't believe I actually used that in a presentation. I feel like I've come a long way now. I got to have a team that I could say, could you add a feature? Or even better, they added a feature for someone else and we got it too. And most importantly, it was a tool to help us focus on our product. So the idea is, I don't want to have to build that management UI. I've got better things to work on for our customers. Anything that gets into our .com and .org comes to enterprise shortly after. So, the big thing, what did we learn along the way? Well, I think most importantly, if you're going to go down this road of building an enterprise product, taking your SaaS, packaging it up, you need to find the right early customers and users. Now, I mentioned earlier that we had someone knock on the door and ask for it. And funnily enough, we never actually got to sell it to them. They decided it wasn't right for them. And it was because we weren't ready for licensing and the legal implications. We'll get to that. On top of that, the second customer that came to us also didn't end up using it. Customers will come and go. But more importantly, if you're going to build an enterprise product, you're going to take that team time, you're going to take the resources away or spend the money doing that. It's just money. You need to make sure you've got the right customers to do it for as well. You're learning from them and they're learning from you. But most importantly, you're learning from them. Pricing is hard. And I say this in every talk I give these days. Pricing is really hard, but do not undervalue your team's work and undervalue your product. So we cheated a little bit. GitHub Enterprise was out there, it was in the wild, and it was 5,000 US per 20 users. And we said, cool, that's our benchmark. Now we'll use that benchmark and add a little bit more. And we add a little bit more because we were growing a team, we had a lot of moving parts, and we also knew it wasn't just one server, it was lots of servers. We had parts to take into account there. As a little bit of pricing advice, advice was given to us by a seed investor of a competitor, and it was pick a number and keep doubling it until you're uncomfortable, and double it again, okay? I'd like to also give a small warning, site licenses. There are so many different license types you can have out there. You could do it based on user, organization, project, issue, depends what your app is. But if you do a site license that says you can do unlimited for a year or even for good, what you're doing is you're essentially saying someone with a 20 user deployment is the same value as a 2,000 user deployment. Larger deployments will take a little bit more time to get everything set up. It takes a longer sales process. Make sure that you build into your pricing to have different tiers. And I would recommend trying to stay away from site licenses as well. Always be closing, okay? Sales, I love it, I got one laugh, that makes me feel good. Sales take a long time. Now, I'm a developer. I started Travis with Sven. I started it in 2011. I was the second developer on it doing Ruby. And all along the way, I've had to change what I've done to try and, as we grow this company and to grow our team. And for a long time, I was the main salesperson. I would be the one jumping on calls, replying to emails, figuring out how to make things easier. And sales take a long time. You'll have someone say how excited they are, and then about 6 months later, will you actually get the paperwork processed and payment received, okay? Sales take a long time. Be ready for that. But on top of that, there are some things to make it a little bit easier. Now, we're a German company based in Berlin, and because of that, we asked people to do wire transfers. Now, wire transfers are just inherently a little bit more complicated, apparently, for organizations, or especially on the American side. So what we did is we decided to accept credit card payments as well. And this was created, it was great. I won't name the company name, but Danish, who's sitting fourth row next to Jen, both, yeah, Jen, Danish, yeah, put up here, come on, put up here. No, he's already there anyhow, you'll believe me. When Danish first joined, we had 2 new customers want to pay us. And we said, oh, let's try and see if we can get their money easier. And he created this form, put a security certificate on it, Stripe payment, and said, oh, you can pay via this. And we went out for dinner and we had payment. Like, it felt not only good to get that like so quickly done, but we showed the tiniest, smallest MVP, showed that we can improve this process yet again. And this is part of how we do some of our sales now. The hardest part about all of this is not technical. Everyone here, who's a developer in the audience? Yeah, awesome. Everything here is doable. Everything here is technical. There are always solutions for technical. It's legal, that's the hardest stuff. And there are 2 things I want to kind of point out. The first one is audit your code. Every line of code needs to be audited. You need to find out what libraries you're using and what licenses you're using in those libraries as well. Because that's going to lead to the next problem of unlimited liability. Do many people know what unlimited liability is? Well, we've got one person. Yep. He also works in sales. And he knows that, I hope he knows, unlimited liability is bad. What it's saying is if a patent troll, I'll say patent troll, but I'm sure there are other versions of this as well, then decides that they want to go after a patent that your code is using. Let's say you're using the wrong license for something. Instead of them going after you because you're the small fry, they go after the bigger fry. They go after any of your larger enterprise customers. And they say, you're breaking the law. Like, you know, the whole Linux side of when, I think it was, I can't even remember the year, when Linux was up in arms about code that was used that shouldn't be. They're going to go after them. And those larger organizations and customers don't want that. So what they build into, or they ask you for, is unlimited liability. And what you don't want to give them is unlimited liability because it means that now you're on the line for all of that. So if they go after the big company and say they go to court and all these legal fees, they're going to come after you for reparations. I would just implore you to look into this because it also leads me to another point that customers are going to ask for changes to their licensing agreements. You're going to come up with a licensing agreement with your lawyer. That's going to cost you time and money. And then customers are going to come to you and ask you to make some amendments and changes that fit their needs based on their lawyer's red lines. You don't need to make them all. On top of that, don't do it for everyone, especially the smaller the license. What you need to do is make sure that you're covering yourself with these costs as much as they're covering themselves with these changes. So if it's putting a minimum on the change, or maybe there's a cost share going on, it's something to be aware of because everyone will have a different change and a different requirement. Customer requests are a really interesting one. Now, there are good ones. There are really valid ones, backups, HA, special APIs. But then there's going to be something that is just very custom to them. And should you make it? Well, you don't want to make one-off feature additions, generally. That's a maintenance nightmare. You're going to create maintenance debt, technical debt. If you do, have it config-based. But also, don't fork your code for a customer. Don't have different copies of your code and don't have different release channels. At most, you can have different configurations, but make sure that you keep your product maintainable. Because over time, as you have more and more installations, you don't want to have special snowflakes. All of this comes down to teamwork. It requires your team to be in agreements? Agree, they have to all agree that you want to do this because it's all going to be development, there's going to be support, and then you're going to have to do releases. You also have to make sure, is your team all right with you growing as a company to do this? Do you need sales? Do you need sales support engineers? One recommendation I can make is focus on having sales support engineers before salespeople. And that's because a lot of this will be about installation and maintenance. when you're very small and you've got a couple of customers, 3, 4, maybe you're growing, you can do the sales process. It's going to be new, it's going to be a little bit out of your comfort zone, but it can be done. But sales support is going to be something that's going to take your time, and then you're going to be saying, I'm going to put money into sales support for things that might actually not eventuate into a sale away and take it away from our code development. Communication to enterprise customers and enterprise trial customers is a little bit different from how you'd communicate to your normal customers. Well, your normal users. Maybe you'd use a very wide mailing list, maybe you'd use a blog post, but for this, you need to keep really good changelog notes and release notes. You need to have lots of docs about installation, frequently asked questions, problems you may encounter, and having a mailing list, even for the people that sign up saying, I'm interested, will allow them to keep tabs of when you have not only a new release out, but maybe you've got a new release where it's addressed a problem that stopped them from buying it in the first place. And really, most importantly, if you don't have to build it, don't. Just buy it. Now, what I mean here is the whole replicated setup for us, we did that. We created our own installation and setup process initially because we had to. There was nothing out there. But when something became available, we took the chance, we leaped, and we used it. We've embraced it. We use Close.io as well. It's a great sales platform for our team. Replicated for licensing and installation is great. On top of that, I'd like to make a special mention for a blog post by Bear Metrics. If you're not using them, also a fantastic product. Now, it's called Don't Build It, Buy It. So it's doing a cost comparison of what they spent building an internal tool only to then not have it work out. They spent a lot of money and it did not work out. Have a read about it. It's a great way to think about how you build your internal tooling as well. So we've come to the end. What is it that I want you to take away from this? Well, something really simply. I want to distill this down to the simplest possible concept I can have you walk away and go, that Josh, he's a smart guy. Okay. I want you to focus on building a great product. And most importantly, I want you to focus on building a great SaaS product. Because what you're ideally trying to do, and what you saw with Chris's keynote yesterday, is enterprise is not something that is initially thought of what you're going to build. Enterprise happens later on down the line from having an established product and people requesting it. When people know and love your SaaS product and you've got advocates, now, sure, this is a little bit more complicated. It's a whole different talk about how you can build that community, but you're looking at something that allows people to use your freemium product or to use your product and become advocates and go into enterprise. You want to build that community because it will let enterprise come to you. And more importantly, if enterprise does knock, if someone says, I would really love to use this behind our firewall, make it a team decision if you answer that knock. It is definitely something that requires team buy-in. It is not something for one single person to go and do. And that's everything. Thank you very much. And as a little special Easter egg, I don't know if you know this, but our little mascot is called Travis. He's Mr. T to us. And who knows Bob the Builder? Yeah. So Bob the Builder has a character called Travis. So when Travis was first built, it used a tool called Bob, which did building. So Travis was an add-on. So Travis was named after a character of Bob the Builder. Thus, when you look at a Mr. T, he is a construction person just like our tractor. There you go. I feel like I've imparted some final knowledge on you. There are 2 things you can take away now. Thank you very much.